we are just a couple of days away and I can't do an entire session. I'm going to give you some very general pointers about facing this paper. A quick right now, some of you might be wondering who the hell I am. Yeah. Let me first clear that up for you. And then we can start on our work. So my name is Azman Branuddin. I am involved with, at the moment, I'm involved with a couple of organizations, and other than that, I'm also, a lecturer and a corporate trainer and a consultant. So I do work in various areas. I've been teaching, specifically if I talk about SEMA, I've been teaching SEMA since 2009, right? Mainly out of Sri Lanka, a little bit of work in Doha, India, in Bangalore, and in Bahrain. I'm hoping to enter some of these new markets, right? So that's actually an avenue that I'm looking at, and which is why I wanted to kind of test the ground as well with respect to the kind of work that you're doing. Right, so that's my experience with SEMA. Now, if we talk about the pre-scene, you all know that we are actually, the pre-scene is based on a company which is sharing hoverboards. Yeah. And in Zealand, which means the industry itself is a recent and innovative industry, which means there's a lot of room for digital areas for to be tested in the paper. It's a one-way rental service on personal mobility devices. It enables end user to complete the last mile of a journey, etc. So I'm sure that you've done your pre-scene work and you're quite clear with respect to having a decent understanding of a pre-scene. So if we try to essentially look at it through KPIs, now you all are familiar with KPIs. No? Let's try to build your KPIs for the SCS. The first KPI that you need to have is pre-scene awareness. Okay, how familiar are you with your pre-scene? So out of a scale of out of 10, right, you need to score yourself at the moment and make sure that you're well read and quite thorough with your pre-scene knowledge. That is extremely important. So let's say we are good with the pre-scene awareness. Then the second KPI that is very important is knowledge on the OTQ content. Now, what do I mean by OTQs are the three main subjects that you have: enterprise strategy, financial management, and risk management, right? These three are your strategic level subjects. Now, the thing about this is I want to highlight, you don't need to know every single detail of every single paper and every single area. It's not necessary. It's not a must. You have to have the requirement is a basic application knowledge, right? The tricky part here is of all the areas. That's the tricky part. So knowing half of the syllabus is not going to help you, and knowing half of the syllabus really well is also not going to help you. You need to know all of the areas at a fundamental level. That is important. I'll show you how it relates, how it relates to the paper. So that is your second KPI with respect to facing the SCS. The third most important is industry knowledge. Okay, again, a basic awareness of the real life, in this case, micro mobility industry. Because the SEMA examiner actually gives you, has allocated a certain amount of merit in your representation of real life knowledge. If you take the effort when you write the paper, if you take the effort to illustrate your answer through real life scenarios, say for example, you're talking about an acquisition of a business, right? Say Runabout is going to acquire DocBike, which is a horizontal integration game plan in strategy. Now, in this case, if you remember that Warner Brothers, or rather, if you remember that Walt Disney Company, the Walt Disney Company has acquired 21st Century Fox, which is an acquisition again. That is an example that you can bring into your answer. And if you're talking about the whole fact that synergy are not being realized in the pace that they have to be realized, in the speed that they should be realized, you can definitely quote that real life example to illustrate that idea in your answer with respect to Runabout. Okay. Now, for that, there are marks. There are actual marks allocated for that kind of illustration. So I'll give you a basic understanding of how to include it, but industry knowledge is your fourth KPI. You have to have a general awareness of the actual micromobility business. And the fourth one is writing practice. The problem with the SES is, if you have read the pre-scene really well, if you have memorized the pre-scene, you know it inside out, every word, then OTQs, you recently did the OTQs, you're very familiar with your OTQs also, you have excellent financial risk management knowledge, blah, 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 all that. You've done your research over the past couple of weeks or before the exam, you go through some of the websites, Reuters, Bloomberg, you type the keyword micromobility and do your reading, you're thorough with you have a basic industry awareness also. But if you can't present your information, your answers in the right way, you will fail the paper. I have to tell you, it's a bit harsh when I say it like that, but that is the truth. The strategic case study is a paper that has a 40 to 50% pass rate. And not every single student who fails the paper are smart enough, right? There are students who don't really do a lot of work with respect to the first three, but who are good in writing, who are smart in writing, who go to the paper and pass. Okay, I know this from experience because they can present well, which is why. Now, is everybody good in writing? No, everybody is not good in writing. Even I wasn't. I had to work a lot back when I did SEMA in 2011, which then we had a paper called Top SEMA, which was a different game altogether. But we had to practice. If you don't think you're good with your writing, you have to, I beg you, before the paper, try at the very least, I recommend. Now, my students, of course, do 3 mocks compulsory. There are altogether 6. But at the very least, you have to try 2. The least. Because the first attempt, you will make all the mistakes you can make. After that, you will learn. Then you actually apply those learnings and do the second mock. And finally, you go to the paper and you do the paper. Any student who goes to the strategic case study without practicing minimum 2 proper mocks is at very high chance of failure. So these are the 4 things I want you to think about. Ask yourself, am I good with my pre-scene? Do I have a decent knowledge? Have I done my ratio analysis? Okay. Do I know my P&L? Not the numbers, but do I know my ratios? Okay. Do I know if my margins are good? The gross profit margin, operating margin, net profit margin. Do I have a general awareness of these numbers? Because you're the senior financial manager of the company. You have to have a basic understanding. You don't need to memorize. You don't need to memorize again, but you need to know relatively. If I ask you, or if the examiner throws you a question, whether if we are going to acquire DocBike, why would we acquire DocBike? Because you should be, in your mind, you should know DocBike's margin of gross profit margin is 65%, but your margin is 59. They are growing, they have a better margin than you, which is a good prospect for us to buy if we are looking at buying them. And that's a point you can use to validate your answer. If the examiner is throwing a question about why should we buy DocBike, then you can raise this point, which means you have to have a decent understanding of the numbers of your company. So in my video, I'm not going to repeat things that are in the YouTube video. The first tip I gave you in writing is know your role, know who you are. You are the senior financial manager. If you don't think like the senior financial manager of this company, you are going to be in trouble, right? Emulate. If nobody has done it, let me now imagine that this is me giving you the appointment letter. Here I am appointing all of you as the senior financial manager of this company. I know you're not getting paid. It's okay, right? Passing the exam would be well worth it, right? So you need to think like that. Are you good with your, now I can, if you want, I can, I don't like to, this is something that I usually use in my sessions to show students that there's a lot for us to analyze and be aware of. Okay, so this is a direct comparison. What you see here is a direct comparison between runabout, DocBike numbers, and the commentary. Okay, so you have, and this falls under what we discussed. This falls under this pre-scene awareness. Knowing your numbers is the first KPI. It's not just knowing, having read the pre-scene. It's about having analyzed the pre-scene. Do you know the internal audit charter of your company? How your internal audit team continues to work? So in fact, when I saw the pre-scene, the funny thing is you don't even, in at some level, you don't really have to completely revise internal audit the chapter, because these three paragraphs in the pre-scene outlines the entire internal audit process of your company. The entire process is outlined here. Okay, so make sure that you're very thorough with this. This is how Runabout does their internal audit, and internal audit is important. Okay, so I can't stress this enough. This might seem like a repetition that I'm telling this to you again and again, but bear with me because it's important. Right? So please make sure that you are very thorough with your pre-scene. And then let's move to this. Now I want to actually give you a tip on how to go about this, right? Because time management is an issue. You have 60 minutes. It's a serious paper. The problems are very strategic, which means the answers, it's not like the operational case study or the management case study. In those case studies, you get questions which are very specific. They draw a box around when they give you the question itself draws a box around a certain area. But now, strategic case study, that's not the case. You can look at all the past variants. It's about business impact. The questions that are thrown to you talk about the entire business. The whole business is addressed. You have to talk about the good things, bad things from every angle in your answers. That's what a senior financial manager of a entity is supposed to do. So my advice in your practice, when you practice, my advice is you don't really have to do it as I've said here. So here, of course, I'm telling you now, meanwhile, let me remind you, if you have any doubts, I actually wanted to construct this as a Q&A, as I told you. I wanted to answer any questions. So if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. After I'm done with discussion, I'll try and answer those questions. Okay, right. Now let's get back to this. You have 60 minutes. So actually, let me illustrate it here, right? You have 60 minutes. Total Now, this is a limited resource, the time you have. You need to treat it like that. Now, if you don't have enough money to do something, if money is a limited resource, you are very careful with it. The same way you need to treat these 60 minutes. Here, you will definitely take about 1 to 10 minutes, obviously, to read, but most importantly, understand. Okay, you have to understand. Now here, of course, I'd like to talk to you about a skill called read to understand ratio. Now some students have to read the thing twice to understand it. Some have to read a thing 4 times. Some, they read the first para, second para, third para. By the time they hit the third para, they have forgotten what's in the first para. So they have to go back and remind themselves. It happens, right? These are things I've seen in experience, which is why during the practice, when you're practicing, you have to, I call that the read to understand ratio. How many times do you have to read to understand something? I will show you an example. Right? Now, you have to very consciously, in the paper, there's adrenaline, your body is supporting you, right? You have paid some, I don't know how many pounds, 200, 300 pounds to do this paper. There's financial pressure. So in fact, your body and your brain is helping you. So focus is very, very high, right? Your attention span is very high. You need to channel it properly and minimize this read to understand ratio. And with one read, at least 1.5 reads, you need to understand the whole thing. Most importantly, the requirement. Okay. Then the next 5 to, I don't mind, but you forget about the next few minutes. I'll say few because I'm not training you to write at the moment. Next few minutes, plan the answer. You have to plan your answer. Okay, not big things, small bullet points. Okay, small bullet points, but here there are 2 issues, guys. The first issue is, in this part, if you misunderstand the requirement, what is going to happen is you're going to write an answer that is not relevant. That is why I'm stressing on this point. Somebody is asking you to go on lane 1, you're going on lane 3, and that will not help you pass. So understanding the requirement is important. 2, planning. Why planning is important is because imagine this situation, you're writing the answer. You have the first para planned out. Okay, benefits of debt. Why would we go for debt, right? Now you're thinking, okay, debt is really good. Debt is cheap, right? I have my interest payment. Interest is paid from profits before tax. So there's a tax concession on interest. You're typing that. Oh, because you know that you're typing it, but one point is not enough. You need a second and a third point to get full marks. Now, what do students do is they type things, and while they are typing, in their mind, they try to discover new answers while typing. Okay. Now, in that process, what happens is you're thinking more about what to write than the requirement. And ultimately end up writing things that are not relevant to the requirement, but you write things that you just know about. Okay, so you have to very carefully think about this. And the point here that I'm stressing is, please make sure that you understand the requirement and you have a rough sketch about a few keywords. A few keywords will help. I will try to illustrate it to you today. Just keywords, right? Debt, okay. Tax concession, okay. Gearing is high. Our gearing is high, which is a disadvantage. 1 point. A few keywords. Then now, if you take, let's say, 20 minutes for this whole process, reading, understanding, and planning. Now the thing is, already you have a good understanding of the requirement and you have a plan. What's the remainder? The remaining time. You have 40 minutes. Okay, you have a good 40 minutes to purely write a good answer. And 40 minutes is a lot of time, guys. Okay, and your the 21st minute when you're starting to write, you already have a good plan, a good sketch. There might be gaps, those can be filled, but overall, out of the 34 marks allocated, you're good with about 20 marks if you have done this properly. The next part is, within these 40 minutes, how do you collect the remaining marks? As you write, you introduce a few good pointers, you introduce an industry example, you bring in some of your real life experiences. The way you write will earn the balance marks. But this work that you do initially is critical to making sure you do you put down a right answer. Okay, SES is a smart game, right? And I have a 100% pass rate with SES. Okay, I'm not saying it lightly, right? I do in Sri Lanka, of course, I do it in collaboration with the ICBS, the Imperial College of Business Studies. You can check, right? I maintain a 100% pass rate, and I'm giving you my trade secrets. Okay, so this is something that I want to tell you. Now, in the writing part, what are the things you can do? Please use simple and sensible subheadings to your paragraphs. Okay? Just simple ones. Don't try to overcomplicate, or sometimes I see students writing the entire requirement again. The whole requirement is a subheading. Don't do that. If you're copying the requirement as a subheading, what you're doing is you're wasting precious time. It's time. Every word you write that is unnecessary is time that you're wasting. You don't have time to waste. So please use simple subheadings, and then sometimes when I read answers, there'll be a paragraph. The paragraph is 130 words. The entire 130 words of 80 words, let's say 80 words, but the entire 80 words is one sentence connected with commas and semicolons and things. So by the time I read half of the sentence, the idea of the paragraph is missed. It's gone. I can't make head or tail out of that paragraph. So because I think it happens under pressure, I think it happens out of subconscious or unconscious. It's not something that you do deliberately. Okay. So please, if you feel like that, this is why it's important to do the mock and reread your answer. You have to read it again and see what will I do differently if I write this answer again. Then you will realize the changes that you will make. And one of the biggest changes I see very commonly that students can do is writing simple and short sentences, right? A sentence is a connection of, there's a subject, there's an object, and a verb. So rather than writing 3 sentences in one entire line with commas, where the idea can get misrepresented, you can use short sentences. This is actually something that examiners suggest, right? Because there are good paragraphs, good points, but the idea is misrepresented because they overcomplicated the paragraph. So writing has to be simple. Then use paragraphs, para breaks. Now, this is what I wanted to tell you. Now, how do you gain marks? It's a marks game. How many marks do you have to get? Out of 100, can anybody tell me? Now, nobody is saying anything. It feels like I'm the only one who's talking. Can somebody tell me what's the pass mark then?
85.
It's how much?
45.
85, is it?
45 of 100.
55.
45 of 100.
No, no.
80 or 150.
80 over?
150.
See, so here itself there are, see, this clarity is very important. Oh my God. If you, right? Look, I don't know why. Let me clarify this for you. Please. Your pass mark is 80 over 150. That is, let's look at it from percentages. 80 divided by 150 is right. In fact, I round this off to 54%. Okay. So thank you for giving me the answer, all of you. I can share the recording by all means. That's totally all right. Now you have 3 tasks. No, task 1, task 2, task 3. This is your paper. For each task, there'll be one task 33 marks, 34 marks, and 33. Right? Let's look at the sum. This is how your 100 marks is given. Now, if your percentage is 54, how many marks do you need to get from each task? On average, you need to target 18 marks each. Okay. And the best thing, you know what? Under each task, you have either 2 to 3 subtasks. So you already know how many marks are allocated, how much time is allocated, and how many subtasks are there. You can target this. Okay. Now, none of you are little kids. No, you're not 20-year-olds. All of you are very mature. All of you are very experienced. Which means if you can't smartly, and the best thing, CIMA is a professional paper. It's not an academic paper. It doesn't demand you to sit down and study for 10 hours, 20 hours, you know. That's not the game. CIMA is a professional qualification, which means it's for professionals. It's for people who are working. That's why the pass mark is 54%. If it's an academic paper, the pass mark would be 80%. So they don't expect you to go the entire length. They expect you as a professional to balance your life and do the academics and also do the paper and get the 54, bloody well pass the paper, become a ACMA and move on. Never look back. So that's the game here. So you need to be a little bit smart because this is something that it's not impossible. Right? So the game is earning 18 marks. Now to earn the 18 marks, I'm giving you 2 very important pointers here. Okay. When you write an answer, right, under each task, one thing is you need to refer to a tool, something that you saw in my first YouTube video. That's why it's important that video, the first one is important because it goes into length, into detail, because it's an opportunity to refer to a strategic analysis tools. And you have at least half to 1 mark allocated for a reference. Say, for example, you're talking about a strength of, right? You're talking about a strength of runabout. Right? They have a lot of intelligence on transport and mobility related data. Now they're talking about a different business venture, opening a consultancy business, which means you're now typing runabout has a lot of intelligence on data based on a SWOT analysis, identified based on a SWOT analysis. Now, what did you do? You used the chance to refer to a tool that you learn in your CIMA journey. SWOT is a tool. PEST is a tool. PESTEL is a tool. 5 forces is a tool. When you see the opportunity to refer to a tool, don't go and just write all the tools that you know. It has to be an application. Huh? When you refer to a tool, you get a mark. And if you get 53 from your writing, you get 53, that 1 mark can save you. Okay. So the first reason, or the first tip, right? First secret, okay, I'm giving you is, whenever you see the opportunity, refer to a strategic analysis tool. Right. Secondly, number 2, is what I told you earlier. The research. I told you, there were 4 KPIs. You have to somehow try and include a real life example. Okay. Which means in your entire answer, when the examiner reads your entire answer, say the examiner has given you 52%. Now 52 fail mark. The examiner will evaluate overall. How is this answer presented? One of the evaluations is, have you referred to any strategic tools? Another question the examiner asks is, have you brought in your actual experience, your real life experience, your research knowledge, anything that you read on the news? Have you properly connected it? Now, those are opportunities for you to get a couple of additional marks. Another thing that the examiner evaluates is, how is the overall presentation? Overall presentation of your answer. Is it clear? Is it well done? Is it something that a senior financial manager would do instead of an operational executive in a company? These are things that will merit that extra mark and push you over that final hurdle of that line between failing and passing, guys. These are tried and tested. That is why I'm telling you, I don't want any of you to fail, right? I'm not doing this free for, I honestly, because it's Corona and a lot of people are facing a lot of troubles, all that. I want to try and do what I can. Okay. So that's why I'm telling you. So don't fail. Don't fail. Do the work. There's 3 more days. That's more than enough for you to brush up on some of these skills that you need. In fact, the third advice I want to give you is, do not miss any ethical implications that you see. Any area, any task, if you see an ethical problem, ethics, Sima, no, Sima is a stickler for ethics. If you see an ethical implication, you must raise it as a concern. Sima expects you to do that. Now, don't go looking for ethics. Don't go creating ethical problems, right? These tasks are very, very transparent, right? If you see a shady problem that is happening, if you see one executive, a senior manager has gone to dinner with a local council authority governor, and the next day we are getting a mail that a deal is open to us now to enter that city. Now you are seeing something, you raise it, one sentence. There could be an objectivity concern here, which is something that we need to be vigilant about. Done. But you raised it. That is what is needed. Okay. So do not miss any ethical implications that you see. Now, on that note, what are the tools? I wanted to give you a quick summary on what are the tools that you can mention depending on the need. If it's a Tonga, Mr. Falls, Tonga is actually waiting. I've been admitting him continuously. He's joining and then cutting off, joining and cutting off. There might be a issue with his network connectivity. Maybe he can join through a different link or something like that. Let him know. I've been admitting him. Right. If you see a internal appraisal situation, you can definitely refer to SWOT. Now, I've already given you the document. Now, you see that in the video, right? That is why it's important you go through the video very carefully, because it gives you extensive detail about this, which means you know the business very well, which means you won't miss an opportunity if the task gives you the opportunity. That's why it's important, right? So SWOT. Okay, before that, let me show this to you, will you? PESTEL. If it's a macro environmental analysis, you are talking about the country, politics, general economics of the country, you're entering a new market, macro factors, then PESTEL. 5 forces if it's industry: substitutes, suppliers, customers, new entrants, and competition. If that's the case, use that chance to apply 5 forces. Just say, based on a 5 forces analysis, competitive rivalry seems to be very high. That one sentence can give you a lot of traction. But you have to be smart about it. Huh? Apply it in the right place, please. I mean, just because now don't go and write in the exam all the models that you know, saying, look, I went on a webinar, this bugger was saying, you know, you have to refer to all the models, and then don't use this as an excuse to write everything that you know. You have to mention it in the right place at the right time in the right way. Then let's see. Hold on. Okay, so I can see some questions coming. You can continue mentioning them. Write all your questions in. I'll address all of these once I complete this. Huh? Okay, now Mendelow's matrix, if it's a stakeholder issue, any stakeholder, right? Mendelow's actually captures all your stakeholders. No? Ansoff, if it's either a market expansion or a product deployment. Ansoff matrix. The Tara framework, if it's a risk management angle. If it's about risk management, your company, your CFO is writing to you about, sure, right? Your CFO is writing to you about developing a risk management strategy, you can definitely refer to the Tara framework. Generic strategies, if you're supposed to come up with business strategy. Porter's diamond, if it's a, well, new market analysis, right? Factor conditions, infrastructure, etc. You're looking into going into a new country, or maybe Mineering is in Dealand. Maybe they want to buy Mineering. Maybe if it's backward vertical integration, maybe they want to expand into, we want to, as Runabout, we want to, because you're senior financial managers, we want to launch hoverboard sharing in Dealand. We are in Zealand, we want to do it in Dealand. Then what do you do? Value chain, Porter's value chain, if it's about business integration, all the components, right? Inbound, operations, outbound, marketing and sales, after sales, and then the support elements. This is one model you can use for value chain and business integration. 7S is also a good model. It's up to you which one to use. You can use either. McKinsey's 7S, right? The hard S's, the soft S's, all combined with shared values, etc. Then Lewin's process for change. Yeah, change management. What are the three? Unfreeze, change, refreeze. Unfreeze, change, refreeze. Those are the three steps that Lewin said. So say you're doing organizational restructuring, or you have bought a new company. Now you have to change them because the new company, they're not used to us, our operations, they need to change. How do you do that? Unfreeze, change, refreeze. SAF framework, if it's a strategic options evaluation. Okay, if it's a strategic options evaluation, suitability, acceptability, and feasibility framework has to be used. You have to be a little bit careful here. You can't overdo it. You can write for 1 hour about suitability, another hour about acceptability and feasibility. Don't do that. Then the balanced scorecard. If it's especially you're looking at the business from a 360-degree angle, and you have to develop KPIs, not only financial KPIs, but also non-financial KPIs. In fact, guys, if you have a task which is about developing KPIs, the best tool would be the balanced scorecard that you can refer to and even use, without a doubt, use. 4 perspectives, no, customer, internal business, learning and growth, and financial. If it's about organizational hierarchy and operational to vision, how do you achieve that? You can talk about the performance pyramid, but this is not something I usually recommend. It's a very large model. You can talk a lot about this whole thing, right? There are so many components. If it's about operational efficiency, maybe you can talk about it. But other than that, I wouldn't really go on. There are other models that you can use. If it's about developing a performance appraisal system and rewarding people, then you can definitely use the building block model. COSA framework for, again, enterprise risk management strategy. You know the COSA framework. 4 objectives, 4 level business levels, and 8 elements. So you have that whole cube matrix thing. Yeah. So if it's an enterprise risk management framework development, you can refer to the COSO framework. And finally, change management. Resisting, you see people resisting change. You are trying to introduce a bot. You're trying to digitize your company. You know, automation processes are happening and people don't like it. People don't like change. In that case, obviously, you can use Kotter's 8-step process of change. Okay. Then, right. So answer planning is something I will not go to detail. Now, finally, the last thing that I wanted to tell you was this, guys. The co-activities. Okay. Now, before I go into detail, one thing that you need to understand is here you have your these earlier Sima used to do the marking through. I even talked about this in the video, right? In the 7 tips video, Sima used to do the marking based on 4 competencies, not co-activities, right? They called it competencies to say technical, business acumen, leadership, and people. Now that's not the case. In fact, I find this much better. Right? So what will happen is you have these 5, and let's say in your paper, I told you, let's say for example, you have subtask 1 and subtask 2. So what will happen is, this is basically the construct of your paper, right? Most of the time, subtasks will have 2. Each task will have 2 subtasks, but at least one will have minimum 3. Okay. Each task, listen to this carefully. Yeah? Each of these tasks belongs to one of these co-activities, right? It will either be about developing strategy, either about evaluating your environment. Now, when you go to do something, you evaluate your environment, context, either about financing strategies, or about risk, mitigating risk, or control. So five co-activities. What are those 5? Strategy, environment, finance, risk, and control. These are the 5 co-activities. Now let me illustrate this. If you've done your research properly, this is the strategic case study first variant in the last sitting. No, the one before that, ShinePod. Okay, there was Run and then ShinePod in the Feb 2020 case. Now here, see, I told you there are tasks, and for each task there will be subtasks. So here this is the first screen you see. So here the first task has 2 subtasks, and they are telling you 50-50, which means you know how much time to allocate. Now you won't do the same thing with the second subtask, because you will write little for A and more for B, because more marks here. You need to be careful here. Now sometimes actually, that reminds me, one big common mistake that students do. This 40% is the first one, and the first one is the one that you start writing. So you are more comfortable, you write more because it's the first one. And ultimately you've used up the time for the second one on the first one. Right? So technically, if there is 60 minutes, when they say 40 and 60, or let's say there are 40 minutes, when they say 40% and 60%, 16 minutes for the first task, 24 minutes for the second task. That's how the time allocation is done when it's 40% and 60%. If you spend more than 16 minutes, if you spend 20 minutes, 22 minutes writing the first part, then you wasted precious time on a part that you don't have enough marks for. Can't do that. Okay. Now on that note, see, look at this. Now here, let's not worry about the variant. Let's look at the questions. Now here, the first one is evaluate the argument that the reputational risk associated with the environmental impact should have been identified and managed before the online petition got created, 50%. Secondly, recommend with reasons the strategy that SD should follow in order to minimize the impact of legislation that would make us responsible for recycling our own waste. Now, how many marks did I tell you a task has? I told you that a task has how many marks? 33 marks. Okay. How is the 33 marks allocated? This is the marking, guys. You have in this question for the first task, first subtask, you have here evaluation of threat to reputational risk. You have 8 allocated, and management of threat to reputational risk 9 allocated. Okay, so 8 plus 9. I'm looking at the maximum number. 8 plus 9 is how much? How many marks? 17 marks. Okay, right? And then this is how, this is the CIMA marking guidance. This is how your answers are marked. Then the second task. What is the second task? With reasons the strategy that SD should follow in order to minimize the impact of legislation. Strategy, 8 and 9. Again, 17 marks. 17 plus 17, 30. Well, it's one of these will be 33, another will be 34 for the total. So here the first task is 34. This is how your marks are allocated. So if you do this game smartly, so what do you have to do? For 54%, all you need to do is from this 17, can you get 10? And from this 17, can you get 10? 10 each, you have 20. You're good with that task. Right? And to get 10, look at the sub points you need to write, at least 5. No? If it's a benefit and risk evaluation, you need to at least write 3 benefits and 3 risks. So you have 6 points, 2 marks each. Good. That is why I told you answer planning is important. So I think I'm addressing a lot of things here, guys, that you need to think about for the paper. I'm not talking about the content. I'm not really talking about the theory areas, all that. But these are important. And these are the things that help you pass. So I hope you're taking notes and you're actually thinking consciously about these things. So this is how your marking happens. Now, the other thing I showed to you was co-activities. No? Do you notice the 5 co-activities? Let me remind you. Business strategy, ecosystem or environment, financing, risk and control. Now, if you look at this one here. Section 1, subtask A is co-activity B, 50%. Subtask B is develop business strategy, co-activity A, 50%. Then section 2, part A, first subtask is mitigate risk, co-activity D, 40%. Part B is recommend financing strategies, 60%. So here you see that each subtask directly links with one of the co-activities. And when I don't want to do the numbers here, 5 co-activities, when you really go back and look, you have equal marks allocated for each co-activity, because each co-activity is important. Because as a senior financial manager, as a senior financial manager, the SEMA body, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, expects their products to be very good with strategy, environment, financing, risk, and control. All five. That's why, in fact, I do the University of London programs, Oxford Brookes programs. I do the ACCA qualification and CFA. Among all these papers, other than the CFA level 3 paper, the SEMA strategic case study, why I settled with this paper in SEMA is also because I really like this paper. It's a very smart and practical paper. You approach it the right way without overdoing it, with a relaxed but mature mindset as a senior financial manager, you're good to go. You will pass. Okay. You really need to emulate that. So this is me showing you that these five are very important. And you need to ask yourself, am I good in developing strategy? Can I evaluate strategic options? Can I recommend business strategy? Can I evaluate so there's a question also, I'll try to answer that. Can I evaluate an acquisition proposal or a merger? Do I have a good aptitude in opportunity and threat response? That's why that's what appraisal is important. I actually do a very extensive discussion there. Opportunity and threat response is critical, guys. Look at Corona, COVID-19. It's a threat. How do you respond to it? There can be a variant. There will not be, but it's definitely something. Ecosystems, business environment. Apply suitable strategic tools. What are these tools? PESTEL, SWOT, 5 forces, etc. Stakeholder, Mendelos. Respond to changes in the environment. Recommend KPIs, balance scorecard. Respond to economic, political, and currency risks. These are the things that you have to do under ecosystem B. Financing, very simple. Huh? Actually, guys, if you notice, I'll show you, I can even show you 2 things. Financing is the area that is least tested. Here, out of the 6 subtasks, how many do you see with financing? Only 1. I'll show you another variant. Okay, here 7 subtasks. Out of 7 subtasks, only 1. Financing. That's why students worry too much about financing. I'm telling you, don't over worry. The marks allocation, I'll show you another one. Out of all the co-activities, D is tested, A is tested, B is tested, C, D, E, E. C is only 1. Okay. So financing, in fact, when you look at the C co-activity, C, recommend financing strategies, evaluate the suitability of sources of finance. What are the sources of finance? Debt, equity. That's it. That's it. You either go for a bank loan or go for a share issue. Share issue, there are different ways. You do it through a private placement or a rights issue or a public issue. End of the day, it's somebody buying shares and becoming owners of your company. That's it. Debt. But go for a bank loan or issue a bunch of corporate bonds. See if they get sold. Right? So that dividend policy is important. You know why? Who are major stakeholders? Investors. Investors make money through dividends. So how we pay our dividends are very important. Okay. And business valuation models. There's a question on that as well. Recommend and apply business valuation. We'll take a look at it. Right? Not in detail. We don't have time. And didn't. Okay. So risk, evaluate and respond to risk. I gave you 2 frameworks also, COSO, Lewin's, COSO framework and TARA framework. Manage risk register, right? You know the risk register is given to you in the pre-scene. We include the main risks. We don't write all the risks in the business. I can show you, for example, let me show you. Have you ever seen the risk register of maybe Uber. This is Uber's risk register. Hold on. Start. Here. Here, risk factors. Item 1A, risk factors from the annual report. Item 1A, risks related to our business. It starts in page 8. From page 8, it goes on until page 49. You don't read this document. In fact, guys, I don't recommend it now because we are just close to the paper. But if you actually take the effort to read this document, these 8 to 49 pages, you will know everything that can go wrong in a mobility business. Every single thing that can go wrong. Okay, everything is addressed. Here, if we are deemed an investment company under the Investment Company Act, applicable restrictions could have an adverse effect on our business. Every angle of risk is addressed here. And I've read it. Okay, I've read this document, which is why I'm very comfortable with micromobility. Okay, so one thing is don't overfear. I showed to you finance. Sometimes students keep asking me finance, all that. Remember that you have other areas to score marks from. Balance it out. Be smart in this game, right? It's a 55 mark play. You just have to get 55. You don't have to get 80. And finally, control mainly through internal audit. That's why I told you, please make sure in the pre-scene you read the internal audit charter carefully. How do they conduct internal audit? Right? What do you do with the internal audit team? Evaluate the implications of compliance failures. Audit testing, yeah, substantive testing and compliance testing. Compliance testing is testing to see if we comply. Substantive is testing to see what if we don't comply, what will happen or what to do, how to respond to lack of compliance. Two types of audit testing. So compliance failures and of course, corporate governance. How do we respond to threats of poor governance? Anybody, maybe I'll throw you a question. Let's see how good you are. Tell me a corporate governance weakness of this business. I'm sure it's bloody easy. If you were given the freedom to update corporate governance structure, what would you change in the corporate governance in the company at the moment? No, nothing. Everything's perfect, is it? Sure. All right, I'll take that. Perfect. So nomination committee is absent. Yeah, and it's brilliant. Super. Guys, you guys are like crazy awesome, huh? Just have to pass the paper. Balance of NEDs and EDs, correct. Agreed. Board balance. Yeah, super. So that falls all under here. Now, one thing I couldn't talk about is very importantly, why you see a lot of D and E getting tested in the variance is because you have ethics here. Now, ethics, CSR, corporate social responsibility, and governance. These three are like three corners of a triangle. These three, right? Ethics, CSR, and corporate governance. So they are all always interconnected. That's why D and E are important. So identifying ethical dilemmas and responding accordingly, evaluating and mitigating cyber risk, hacking, malware, ransomware, virus, trojans, etc. Cyber risk, not having a backup, right? And finally, recommending internal controls. So these are your core activities. I showed to you how your marking is done. The weightage, which you will see in the first page itself, the weights are given. This will be a trigger for you to allocate your time carefully, and also for you to determine how the marks are given. Okay, and then you go on. Even in the paper, the subtask A and the allocation is given. Knowing which core activity it belongs to will definitely help. All right. Okay, now let's, so far in a general sense, with respect to facing the SCS, the smart things that you need to know, I think this is it. Okay, except of course the KPIs that I told you. If you're good with your KPIs, then you're good. Okay. If you haven't practiced, you will need to write. Okay. Yeah, so I will have this video available for you. Some of these reference material is proprietary, guys. You know, I've worked so many years too hard to develop this. A lot of experience, a lot of knowledge has gone into it. So I would actually prefer if you can access the video, and through the video, you know, work it out. I'll share it with Charles here, and I'll have a chat with him also and see what kind of support I can additionally give you. On that note, let's try to take the questions that I had. Do we need to always recommend at the end of the answer? Now, this is the thing. It's a good question. CIMA has the skill levels and verbs described, right? And for you, for your level, the skill levels are level 5. And in your task, you will see one of these verbs. Either advise, assess, evaluate, recommend, review, select. Sometimes, very rarely though, I see discuss from level 4. But others don't really come into play. Discuss from level 4, and mainly it's these level 5 verbs, because strategic case study is your final level. Now, you will not recommend if they don't ask you to recommend. So your question, the way it's phrased, it's about do we need to always recommend at the end of the answer? No. You only have to recommend if they want a recommendation. If they specifically tell you the first subtask is evaluate the options, and the second subtask is recommend an option, there you have to recommend. Sometimes in subtasks, they say provide a review or provide a preliminary conclusion. Okay, you have 3 options. The question is evaluation, you evaluate, but at the end of that task, they say with a preliminary conclusion. Preliminary conclusion is not recommend. Preliminary conclusion is you giving a rough idea to say, out of the 3, this might be good. Recommend is telling specifically, I recommend that this is the best option in this situation. You have to be very explicit about it. So make sure that these are all downloadable in the CIMA website. You have a thorough understanding of the definitions. This is very important, because in the, I told you, you must understand the requirement. Now, when I mean the requirement, I talk about this in the video. When I mean the requirement, I also including the verb. I'm talking about the verb. What do I mean by the verb? What I mean by the verb is this verb, these 5. So you have to know, you can't, when they ask you to advise, which is to counsel, inform or notify, you can't go and evaluate in order to change if necessary. It has to cater to the requirement, what the examiner wants, right? You can't do a assessment when they want a review. Okay. And you definitely can't do advice when they want a recommendation. So there are distinct differences. These are level 5 verbs. Please make sure that you go through them and understand them. CIMA doesn't play around with these documents. These documents are provided for you to use. They very carefully describe them for you to use. So that's that. Can you suggest us the best business valuation for Runabout? Not for Runabout. The best business valuation for any business is earnings based, and the free cash flow method, what is generally known as the discounted cash flow approach, DCF. Okay, so earnings based. Now valuation, there are mainly three. No, what are the three? One, asset based. Okay, mostly book value. Two, PE. Right. Multiples. Right, you use your multiples. Right, not only PE, there are other variations of multiples. You can even multiply your dividends to see future dividend income. The third one is free cash flow approach with DCF, right? So this is the best as long as you have enough information, right? And you can also use this. Why? Because we are a listed company. So price to earning multiple will be there historically. We are a listed company. No, there is a price out of these two. There's a price, no, historically. So we know our historical PE, which means I can predict in the future what my PE will be. Now, for a private entity, it is a little bit tough, unlisted. That's why you need a proxy company. So if you have to value a private entity, PE is not the easiest unless you find a suitable listed proxy entity. Okay. Asset based is good. It's not a good valuation method, but it is a good technique to establish a baseline price. Let's call it a simpler starting price, the minimum price. Then on top of it, you will never go with the asset based valuation. And asset based is good when you don't have a lot of intangibles. But I don't recommend asset based for Runabout. You know why? Because we are a digital company. We have app. We have a lot of our assets as intellectual property. Right? We have our app. We have our intelligence. We have our data. We have information about customers, which are all highly valuable. But they are intangible assets. So you have the CIV method of intangible valuation, but it's not an exact science. So that's not the easiest to do, asset based. It's just a good valuation technique to establish a starting price for a business, right? But you have to do the free cash flow DCF valuation, earnings based, to see where is your future prospect. You actually go on to looking at the terminal value. So you do that, right? Is debt always preferred provided your debt ratio is low? Now, is debt, look, now debt is preferred not when your debt ratio is low, because see this debt ratio, you're talking about the debt ratio, which is gearing. No? Now, this gearing in construction businesses, for example, this gearing changes, this ideal gearing level changes. If you take construction businesses, they are highly geared. They are anyway in normal business as usual environment, they are highly geared because they have a lot of cash tied up with assets. They like to use debt loans to fund their projects, right? So you can't blame a construction company and reject a loan saying you're highly geared. This gearing, ideal gearing level is not something that exists. But you can relatively say gearing is high, gearing is low. Now for debt too, now the question is debt always preferred? Debt is preferred when it is, let's look at some of the reasons why you would go for debt. Okay. One, it's cheap than other financing options. Now going for a share issue, public issuance, rights issue, you need to find investors. If it's a rights issue, your existing investors should be ready to buy things. If they don't have the money, if they can't buy it, you can't go for a rights issue. Private placement, you need to find an investor who is willing to pay, or you can't. Right? Share issues nowadays, share issues never really get fully subscribed. So debt is preferred when it is cheaper than other financing options. Now, if you remember Modigliani and Miller, debt is also preferred when it drives the company, or when it takes the company closer to the optimal capital structure. Where, what do you mean by the optimal capital structure? Your cost of debt and cost of equity, both are at the minimum levels. You're servicing your finance in the cheapest way, right? So when it's cheaper, when it's more convenient also, when it's easier to get a loan. Okay, these are some of the reasons that debt would be preferred. So I can't say a direct answer because SCS is not a multiple choice answer. No, you can argue these things. For your question, is debt always preferred provided your debt ratio is low? It's a situational thing. I need to know the context, right? I wouldn't just go for debt. The reasons I would see is it cheaper for me to go for debt than equity? Is it taking me closer to my optimal capital structure, where that curve is at the minimum? Is it more convenient just to go for a bank and ask for a loan? Then I would go for a debt option to finance my project. All right. Is it required to write answers in detail with points? Is it required to write answers in detail with points? Yes. Yeah, it is. Okay. I mean, it is a must. Not just details. I would use the word justification. There needs to be the right kind of justification, or in simple words, reasoning. Now, sometimes, let's look at the financial ratios. Okay, now here, now when you look at these numbers, right? Profit before tax, no. Let's say dividend payout, right? GP margin. Okay, GP margin runabout is 59%. Doc bike is 65%, right? Gross profit margin. Now here, if you write a line like saying there is a stable, healthy margin, this is called a description or commentary. You have commented. You have provided a commentary. Now, if I show you the verb, comment belongs to, hold on, here the comment. Okay, wait. Apply, assess, define. Yeah, this one, sorry. Right? Describe is a intellectual level 1 or 2. Now you're asking me is it a must to write answers in detail with points. Now all I can tell you is look at the verbs. Do you see a verb like describe here? No, right? All verbs are advise, assess, evaluate, recommend, review, select. None of these require short answers. No? They are all lengthy, detailed answers, especially that you need to provide with justifications, reasoning. So yes, I must implore you, I'm highlighting to you, I'm telling you it's a must for you to provide good detailed answers. In fact, guys, for each task here, for each task, my word count recommendation. Okay. Word count, average. On average, there are 752, at the very least, 1200 words for each task you must write. And don't tell me 750 is a big count. For the entire task, I'm talking about both the subtasks, the whole thing. Right? So your entire paper minimum, because you have 40 minutes. If you write, let's say 40 minutes, if you write, what's your word count? Let's say a decent word count per minute is 25. If you write 25 words for 1 minute, 25 words for 40 minutes, you will write 1000 words. Okay, let's say 25, let's reduce it to 20 for 1 minute. 60 seconds, you're writing 20 words, 800 words. Okay, so I'm telling you, okay, no, not 800, let's write 750 at least. So for each task, not subtask, I'm telling you for each task, please don't misunderstand. For each task, you need to write at the very minimum 750. I see answers ranging to 1000, 1100, 1200, but this range is good. There is no reason to say a student who writes 750 will fail, as long as the entire 750 words are very relevant to the requirement and on point, where you haven't wasted words. You know, in general conversation, people say fillers. You know, when people talk, there are fillers we use, like right, fillers, or you say and, or things like you know, right, you know, yeah, I know, right? These things, even in writing, these are there. Students tend to write filler words to fill the gaps in their heads. Things that words they are comfortable with, they try to write, and these are all wasteful words. It increases the word count, but it doesn't improve the quality of your answer. So that's just a tip on writing. Writing is critical here. I told you, writing practice. Even if you are good with these three, there's no point if you don't practice your writing. Presentation is important here. Finally, can you briefly talk about which is the most appropriate source of finance for a new acquisition proposal as per Runabout's financials? Most appropriate source of finance. Okay, let's see. Let's try to actually illustrate it. Now here it's Monday afternoon. You have just returned to your desk after having lunch. Jio CFO pops up on your computer screen requesting a video call. I attended the board meeting. We talked about various opportunities. Jack Kevery argued that debt finance is always better than equity. He had even wrote an article from the Zealand Telegraph to the meeting to support his argument. Sure. May was not convinced. She pointed out Runabout's current level of debt finance is already higher, and she expressed her concerns that lenders would not be willing to lend more money to Runabout. Could you please prepare some briefing notes for me? First, please explain in general terms what are the advantages and disadvantages of using debt finance compared to equity finance. Right? So it's basically an evaluation of debt over finance. So you need to have a really thorough understanding about this. I think this is just to give you an idea. Now let's try to look at this, and let's try to look at generally, before I look at the overall situation, if you look at debt over equity, right? Debt over equity. Let's say advantages. What are the advantages? Cheaper, sure, right? It's cheaper, tax deductible. Access could be easier, faster, right? You can easily negotiate with the bank. There are multiple options, you know, there's floating interest rate versus fixed. There's the time period, you can go for long-term loans, short-term loans, overdrafts, etc. Right? You can reschedule loans. So there's more flexibility. Right? You can bring in other terms. Right? It can, in fact, bring you closer to the optimal capital structure. Sure. Now, if you look at the disadvantages, what are the problems with debt over equity when you compare it with equity? The problem will be one is it's a fixed commitment and unavoidable commitment. Yeah, you need security or collateral. Sure. Okay. What about any covenants? Do we have any limitations, any bars with the bank to say after this limit we are already geared book value based 54%? Maybe our limit is 60%, so we can't go for a massive loan, right? Lenders usually take precedent over investors when settling, right? Which means this will raise investor expectations, or yes, we can say expectations, because higher risk, higher return, which means cost of equity also can go up as a result, because they'll expect more dividends, all that. Right? So ultimately, that's what I mean by there are relative shareholder concerns in going for large amounts of debt, especially those buggers who have invested a lot of money with us. Yeah, sounds good. Now, let's see. Okay, so this is fine. Yeah. But now let's come to the question. Which is the most appropriate source of finance? The most appropriate source of finance for a new acquisition proposal as per Runabout's financials. Now, new acquisition. Okay. What are the options? Equity options. Then I have, what are my equity options? I can use my cash balance. First, I'll look at my cash balance. Then I will try to cut my dividends. I'm paying 7 billion dividends. Yeah. You should have the numbers in your mind. Dividends. Right. So dividend reduction. If not, maybe a rights issue. If not, private placement, private placing. If not, public share issue. What are my debt options? Go for a bank loan or issue bonds, right? They can even be convertible bonds. Depends, but bonds overall. Now, how will you decide? I can't tell you an answer for this because I don't know the situation. There's always unseen, right? There will always be an unseen. So the situation will tell you the questions to ask, which is I told you already, out of these, which is cheaper, which is more convenient, right? Which is more suitable? Depending on the situation, you will have to decide out of these options. Now, I told you what's good about debt over equity, what's bad about debt over equity. I gave you what my equity options are, what my debt options are. Now you have to evaluate. It's based on the unseen that you get. And decide. Depending on the option, you know, this situation, this is what I have to do. Perfect. Can you briefly talk about the articles or newsletters within the pre-scene and the exam requirement? Look, now don't worry too much about the pre-scenes, right? Now here we have 5 news articles. One is about ankle injuries, right, which have risen. So you need to be a little bit careful. Why? Safety is our key concern. We have to make sure that our users are safe. If all the buggers who are riding the hoverboards are facing ankle injuries, next day a lawsuit can come. It will be a class action lawsuit the next week. We might have to close shop. Can't let that happen. So ankle injuries is one. Second is the CIO of DocBike has criticized outdated IT courses, which means employment issue. So here I also see a ethical angle. I mean corporate CSR, corporate social responsibility angle, because the DocBike is collaborating with the Capital City University to offer a collaborative degree that combines academic study with practical experience. I'm sure your campuses have internship programs. So they're doing something like that. They're offering the collaborative degree. When you do the degree, 3rd year or 4th year, final year, 2nd semester, you come and work with us. So CSR angle can be addressed there. What? And PR, right? Overall PR. So this is a competitor information which can come in handy depending on what kind of situation it talks about. Now, banks criticized credit card customers in a recent report, cyber risk, because we own a lot of personally identifiable data, right? So in this case, we need to understand that we deal with customers who are careless with their credit cards. And if hackers get access to a bunch of credit cards, use those credit card details to access our services, there can be a mismatch between user service and cybersecurity. So we need to be a little bit more careful here, right? Maybe we even promote from CSR angle, promote CSR importance, credit card security importance with our customers. Do everything with our banks. University report has found that the increase in number of bicycles is closely connected. Now this one, of course, I am not very convinced, because they say it's closely connected. But correlation, you know the correlation coefficient? No. The science of correlation doesn't mean just because, you know, they say, we can't really agree. So they attribute this to a lot of things, traffic calming, etc. This is just a identification of how bicycle sharing schemes can help calm your traffic. It might play out positively for us, negatively for us. This was not a key area I was very concerned about, right? Overall, you have to think, we were already in the bicycle sharing business. Do we need to, there might be a situation we might go back. Because there is always the case. That is what I am coming to here. The last one is very important. Now, Transport Minister and the City Council of Capital City are in disagreement. Why are they disagreeing? Because Minister wants to impose stricter rules. But City Councillor has said, no, this is our jurisdiction, our city, we take care of our matters. The problem is this, end of the day, if these buggers fight and revoke our license, we are very dependent on their license. It is actually one of our weaknesses and a threat. The moment a license is taken off, we have to exit the business, exit the city. And at the moment, you need to remember, we are only dependent on what? Hoverboard sharing. We don't have other diversified options. If the license goes, if the license gets cancelled, our business is closed. So there is always the option, the variant that could be where we go back to bicycle sharing or introduce electric scooter sharing. So market development, product development, integration, etc. So that's what you have to be very careful here. You have to understand that as a stakeholder, the central government and the local authorities are key stakeholders. In fact, if you look at my pre-scene activity sheet in the Mendelow's matrix, I have put them under high power, low interest category. We need to keep them satisfied, right? Key investors, government, central, local authorities, tax, major lenders, banks, and even supplier. But I move supplier between high power, low interest, and no, yeah, because supplier, because only Mineering, no, we are very reliant on Mineering at the moment. That is also a key risk I see. If Mineering faces some issue, maybe they don't do it deliberately. See Apple's Foxconn in China, factory got closed 2 months. You can refer to those as examples. 2 months, supply chains are disrupted. They can't fulfill their orders by the deadlines that they promised to their customers, which is a problem. So, of course, high power, low interest. Now, my focus is these two: government and the central or local regulators. You have to be very careful when you're dealing with them. That's what the final news item highlights. So those are the key highlights that you need to take from those. I wouldn't worry too much about them, but make sure that you remember the key extracts from those. How to manage reputational risk. Now, reputational risk. Sure, of course. Reputational risk, this is the thing. It's a situational problem. Now, when you face a reputational risk, it depends on the unseen. First thing, communication. Let's see. Reputational risk. Risk response. What are the things you can do? As per the corporate governance codes and all these information we have, and being a CIMA paper, we need to be having transparent, very effective communication, which means, now say for example, Minering's, like Nike, what happened to Nike, Minering's factory, okay, even these days with Elon Musk, Tesla, China matters, Minering's factory workers are being mistreated. Minering's factory workers, those buggers have, like Amazon warehouses these days, no masks, nothing. Those buggers are protesting. Our supply chain is also disrupted. And now it has been picked by Reuters. Reuters is doing, Zealand Daily also has picked up that news. Now, Minering is one of the key suppliers to us now, which means if the news goes that Runabout's key supplier mistreats staff, under headline, done. Reputational risk. So in this case, one thing is you need transparency. You need to contact Minering. You need to establish that open line of information. You need to know what's going on there. Second thing is effective communication. Our PR function, our public relationship team, PR team, has to effectively get into the play and offer. Now, come on, you all know, I can show you in all these websites. If you take most of the companies, I hope you can see. Now, this is Microsoft, Apple, Google, IBM, right? Intel, HP, Cisco. Now, these are companies that I cover in my job. Okay. Now, all of these companies have their own newsroom. If you go to their websites, there is a separate tab called newsroom. What is that newsroom? It's a key response, a reputational risk management strategy. That is where they issue all the news. That is where they announce their earnings calls. Okay. That is how they keep their investors informed. That is where the analysts go to look for information about the company from the company. So our PR team has to effectively work and use the newsroom, use media outlets to effectively communicate. So effective communication is key in dealing with reputational risk. Then leadership. Okay, you need good leaders, good leadership. Anyway, without the right leadership, none of this is going to work. Okay. So when you ask me generally, without the unseen, generally when you ask me reputational risk, it usually evolves around this. And overall, please, I told you already, always do the right thing. What do I mean by that? Be ethical. Anything that you suggest, anything that you do, I don't have to remind you. I told you earlier also in the tips I gave you. Yeah, do not miss any ethical implications. Do not miss. So when you say reputational risk, I told you in the when I was talking about it earlier, I told you that these three things: ethics, corporate governance, and sustainability, right? Are like the three corners of a triangle. They're all interconnected. Yeah, because of this, when you say reputational risk, it's always around this. If you do the wrong thing, if you do the unsustainable thing, if you harm the environment, reputational risk. If your corporate governance is bad, reputational risk, poor governance, right? If you do unethical things, reputational risk. Okay, so this belongs to co-activity, D and E, as I showed to you earlier. D and E, evaluate and mitigate risk, recommend and maintain sound control. So because of that, it's an important question. It's a right question. You have to be very vigilant about dealing with reputational risk responses. Overall advice I can give you is be transparent, have a good effective communication with all stakeholders, right? With all relevant stakeholders. Now, the biggest, shall I tell you the major problem with risk, reputational risk? Local authorities, government. We are very dependent on the license, no? If we do something wrong with safety, user safety, they can pull out the license. Now, Tesla lost their license to operate in California. Okay, so Elon Musk went on a rant to say, look, no, I'm shifting my headquarters from California. No, we are not going to do anything there. Right? I'm going to shift to San Francisco. But end of the day, that doesn't matter. The problem is the reputation. Reputation is at risk. Okay, so when I say effective communication, don't think this is, when I say PR, it's about customers. It's about all stakeholders. How do you, now if something goes wrong, you need to have an open line of communication with the government, because you can't risk them revoking your license. If they revoke your license, your business is gone. All stakeholders has to be managed, right? And leadership, and always do the right thing. Now here I can remind you, I'll show it to you through this. This is the SEMA strategic level case study. Okay, this is not the SEMA operational level. This is not the SEMA managerial level. This is the strategic level. In fact, if you pass this paper, you're done with SEMA. Correct? On that note, I can definitely tell you here, sometimes you get variance and you have to choose between where is it? Here. Okay. You have to choose between either doing things right or doing the right things. Now, in the operational level, say you work for a company, you're 20 years old, you join a company, you're in the operational level. Your focus is not whether to do the right thing by law. No, that is not your focus. Your focus is doing the things right. You're given a job, you do it right. You take your salary, you go home. Operational level. You are not in that level. You are in the strategic level. Here, it's about doing things differently, strategy, and doing the right thing. I can't stress this enough. Ethical, being ethical, doing the right thing. That's why you shouldn't miss any ethical implications. Okay. So understand that difference. You are a strategic thinker. You're not an operational thinker. Yeah. On that note, I think we are done. You know, there are no more questions. So guys, all I can ask you is do a favor to me, spread word. I will be doing the August case study. If you know any friends, if you know anyone who needs help, they can work with me if they are willing to. I have a completely online engagement, and I have a very rigorous training routine, so to speak, about 20 hours, 25 hours worth of program for the strategic case. Spread word. There's a YouTube channel. Please, give me your support. Subscribe. I hope today everything helped. I hope the YouTube videos helped. Do subscribe. Do follow the content. Let me know if there's anything. If you need more different kinds of content, I do. I do. In fact, mm, you know, you see, I'm always busy, but the pandemic, the virus, actually allowed me the chance to stay in one place, because or else I'm traveling all the time. And today I actually was able to reach out to you, many people from around the world, right? I got the same opportunity with ACCS P5. So I'd like to help more. So help me out by helping me from the social media side and spreading the word. I'll keep in touch as well. Keep in touch with me. Let me know how the exam goes. Give me your feedback. I hope today's session helped. Yeah. I think I answered all your questions, and I also know for a fact that um, the pointers I gave you are very important. Okay, so if you use them properly, you will definitely pass. Okay, don't fail, don't fail. Make sure that you pass. And I'm from Sri Lanka. My country of origin is Sri Lanka. Remember that name, right? So make sure that as I always say, this is my uh, slogan, motto: keep working while having fun. Enjoy life. Smile and just relax. The only thing the last advice I want to give you is with the paper, relax. Please relax. And one last thing here. Say your first task goes a little bit haywire. You start the paper. You start the paper at 9 o'clock, right? 9:10. The first task looks really tricky. You don't know the answer. You don't know the theory. You're now stressed out, right? You try what you know. 9:30, 9:40, 9:50, 10 o'clock, done. First task is done. Don't carry that pressure. Don't carry that negativity. Don't carry the sadness of the fact that you didn't do well in the first task to the second task. Okay, you can start fresh. So be conscious about that. Sometimes I see students who are brilliant, they mess up the first task. Sometimes things go wrong. Now you're under pressure. Okay, now you're under pressure. What happens is you carry that pressure to the second task and you mess that up also. That was an easier one. You could have done it well, but you mess it up. Don't let that happen. So if suppose sometimes some things go wrong, life is like that. No, not everything goes right all the time. So the first task can go a little bit bad. That's okay, right? What you can do is you can forget about that, move on, and go for the task 2 and task 3, right? My So what you can do is, in fact, I would like to connect with all of you guys. That'll be wonderful. Make sure that you send me a request on Facebook. My name is Azman Ranuddin. Okay. Just type in this name and just connect with me. I post a lot of relevant content. There's a page as well. You can please do like the page, give me a support from wherever you are, and let me know how to, how to improve, what kind of things that gaps you face in your countries, so that I can incorporate those in the future and help you in the maximum way. And on YouTube, just go to YouTube and you can type Charles has my link. I just recently, very recently started my channel, and only because I found time, I uploaded a few videos on the case study. Okay, so you can see, you see these two videos, 7 critical tips and pre-scene analysis. If you haven't checked them out, maybe spend some time on those. Spread word. Let me know. The channel is the same name. So just connect with me, work with me. I'm sure we all can. There'll be future work for us all to do. Yeah, I'm working on some interesting content at the moment as well. Yeah, I'm hoping to see you all on FB, on my newsfeed, how you guys are, what you're doing, and your I passed, right? I passed posts, right? I'm looking forward to that. So cheers, guys. Cheers. All the best. Charles has my number. You can contact me through him anytime. Write to me. Yeah. And Sneha in Kerala, I watch her. I'm a big fan of Nivin Pauly, right? Chetan, right? I watch a lot of Malayali movies. Um, Big fan of Mohanlal, sir. So spread word. Yeah, spread word in Kerala. If there are any students who need help with the strategic case study, okay. And I'm hoping to come to Kerala very soon, and just spend some time there. I know it's a beautiful place. Charles, maybe I'll come to Lusaka if you're there. And then we can have a party, man. You can take me around. We can have fun, right? Maybe we'll organize a strategic case study seminar, and I'll come and spend a couple of days there, and do something interesting to help out students there. Yeah. So of course, guys, you're all most welcome. Keep in touch. Let me know how things go. I'll see you on Facebook and on YouTube and stuff. Uh, there is this thing I say in my lectures. What I say, no fear, Azman is here. Okay, so Azman was here. He helped you out a bit. I'm sure you will pass. Okay, all the very best, guys. It was wonderful to see you all, work with you all. Alex, Mageswaran, Charles, Zida, Rita, Chapusi, Julius, Tanya, John, Zena, Sneha, Mumbai, and HK. Hong Kong, is it? I hope not. Right? Wonderful to meet you all. Keep in touch. I will see you around and soon. Yeah. Cheers, guys. Cheers. All right. You